Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist here at the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. And up first, we've got the river breakup chart, and let's see, there we go. Still a flood watch there, Sagwan River, due to one or more ice jams that has caused the water levels to rise, with a breakup that started actually yesterday or Saturday evening. Anyway, there's a potential for flooding there. If the ice jams hold and don't release, then the water will continue to rise. And there's possible flooding along the Dalton Highway, along areas of the Dalton Highway, and that's out through Thursday afternoon now for that flood watch area. Otherwise, aside from that, there are no other watches, warnings, or advisories out for the state of Alaska from the Aleutians and across the interior. Panhandle looking good, high pressure over the interior, and the systems out west really aren't that strong enough to create any warnings or advisories. And the only exception is the flood watch up there along the Sagwan River. Satellite imagery showing a lot of clear skies from the Chukchi Sea and the Brooks Range, even some breaks there, it looks like, along the Arctic coast, North Slope, all the way down into the Gulf of Alaska, including Kodiak Island. And Panhandle had some breaks today. Looks like areas of pretty good clearing, actually, go along with some scattered showers down there as well. And low pressure over the Bering Sea and a weakening front pushing into the Alaska Peninsula, just east of the Pribilof Islands. Still bringing some pretty gusty winds, as high as 50 to 55 miles an hour at Cold Bay had the peak wind gust 55 miles an hour, and Port Heiden gust to 50 miles an hour. With Cape Neuenham also seeing gusts as high as 50 miles an hour today, with the Pribilof Islands seeing gusts 30 to 40 miles an hour out of the southeast. And anyway, heaviest amounts of rain, other than the 1/10 of an inch of shower activity they had at Juneau and Angoon in the last 12 hours, about 8/10 of an inch, a little over 8/10 of an inch, call it just under an inch, fell at False Pass, and Cold Bay picked about 1/3 of an inch of precipitation. Otherwise, temperatures warming in the 60s to mid-70s. Let's see, 76 degrees in Wasilla. That was the warm spot at 3 o'clock this afternoon. And a lot of mid-70s through the Susitna Valley and East Anchorage into the lower to mid-70s, Kenai Peninsula, 70 degrees at, Seward, Valdez, and Kenai. And 72 over at Bethel. Temperatures up near 70 in the Fairbanks area as well. So a lot of sunshine, warm temperatures, lower 70s also portions of the Copper River Basin. And that all due to high pressure aloft that's built into the ridge axis over the western interior there. But coming down on the eastern edge of that ridge, disturbance from the Arctic bringing scattered rain and snow or light snow to the Arctic coast. Very light conditions there with a few more clouds. Otherwise, some scattered showers around the Panhandle today, and again, Juneau and Angoon were the two heaviest amounts I could find there, about 1/10 of an inch. Other areas had some clearings, you can see, look pretty clear up around Yakutat. And front weakening, trying to slowly pushing eastward there across the Alaska Peninsula, areas of rain. Heaviest rain there, again, on the upslope areas, the south side, like False Pass. And beginning tapering off now for the Pribilof Islands, but breezy and unsettled for the remainder of the Aleutians with that 989 millibar low out there. And for tonight, that front continues to weaken, elongates out. The low kind of pulls off to the northwest. Another low begins to approach the the Aleutians there, but still well to the south. We'll spread some more rain up later tonight into the Adak-Atka area. And periods of rain continue for the Alaska Peninsula, and diminishing winds, and the rainfall rate will diminish as well. Looks pretty dry for the central, northern, southeast coast. Still a chance of showers down south. Another disturbance brings a chance of showers mostly the Yukon. Some of that will skip over the border of the eastern interior, and chance of snow continues eastern Arctic coast, rain or snow into the Brooks Range. Clear over the interior. Another nice day tomorrow, 60s to mid-70s for the high. Some areas could even see upper 70s. And a risk of a shower for the eastern border there from Northway to south of Eagle into the Wrangell Mountains. Panhandle, chance of showers, otherwise dry. And wet and windy for the eastern Aleutians. And for the Wednesday outlook, that front weakens too, as well as it pushes eastward, but it'll bring some light rain to the Alaska Peninsula. But wind's no longer a factor with that at all. The gradient pretty slack, even up toward the low center there. Isolated showers behind the front with generally just cloudy skies, lighter winds, dry conditions for all of the Aleutians into the Pribilofs, and mostly sunny central and western interior. Maybe a few more clouds, With the disturbance coming down from the Arctic, chance of showers increase over the Copper River Basin, maybe as far west as the Chugach Mountains there. Panhandle still chance of showers, chance of rain and snow up north. Lows for tonight in the 40s. Southern Alaska, some areas dropping into the mid to upper 30s. Otherwise, upper 30s to mid 40s for the central interior areas, and 20s to lower 30s. Brooks Range, mostly in the 20s north slope in the Arctic coast. Mid 30s northern Bering Sea. 38 to 42 for the Aleutians, and lower 40s Alaska Peninsula. Highs tomorrow, lower to mid 70s you can see for Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Valley, 70 to 75 plus for the Susitna Valley, inland areas of the Kenai Peninsula, near 70 Copper River Basin, 50s for the Panhandle, 68 to 72 in the interior, warmer in the west, cooler in the northeast, lower 30s Arctic coast, and 40s mid to upper there for the Bering Sea, 70s all the way down to Bethel again, with lower 50s along the coastline, lower 70s at King Salmon, lows in the 40s the next morning over southern Alaska, upper 30s to mid 40s central interior, 20s north slope and Arctic coast, and 35 to 40 call it for the Bering Sea, chilliest up there around St. Lawrence Island, lower 40s for the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island. Highs on Wednesday afternoon back in the 70s, 60s 5 to 70, about sums it up. A little cooler over the Copper River Basin with that disturbance coming southward, 50s for the Panhandle. And again, eastern interior the chilliest, 70s will be found out west, lower 30s, lower to mid 30s for the north slope and the Arctic coast, in the 40s again for the Bering Sea.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to first line weather graphic for Tuesday morning there, we've got IFR again, north slope, Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast, into the Arctic Ocean there, and also St. Lawrence Island, just south of the Bering Strait, and quite an area out over the western and central Bering Sea. IFR across the entire Aleutian chain, most of the Alaska Peninsula to Sitkinak. There, marginal VFR southern Kodiak Island, but IFR also in across the Panhandle. VFR south of the Brooks Range for the interior into the Gulf of Alaska down to about Chiniak Bay. And from there, marginal VFR for the North Slope and Arctic coast tomorrow, with even the marginal VFR zone probably pulling northward a little bit from when it starts out in the morning. And then for the Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island IFR, western Nunivak Island, west side, Pribilofs down to Atka, Fox Islands, south coast of the Alaska Peninsula, all IFR. VFR, a lot of sunshine in the interior, mild temperatures, and Panhandle, marginal VFR, so slow improvement there. And then for the Wednesday forecast, we're looking back to the IFR, North Slope Arctic coast, and south of the Brooks Range all the way down to Prince William Sound. VFR, Cook Inlet, Fognak Island, looks like marginal VFR, most of Kodiak Island there, with IFR, Akiak down to Sitkinak, and the Alaska Peninsula Eastern Aleutians, Pribilofs IFR, Northern Bering Sea IFR to St. Lawrence Island, and areas of IFR West Central Aleutians. IFR now over the start over the eastern southeast coast there, quite a batch of IFR off the coast in the Gulf of Alaska. And for the afternoon, that shifts up to the north, almost to Cape St. Elias, but hopefully it'll stay off the coast. Marginal VFR for the inside waters of the Panhandle as well as the coastline. And we've got a patch of IFR still off the southwest coast covering Nunivak, St. Lawrence, and St. Matthew Islands. Marginal for the Pribilofs, marginal for the Aleutians. IFR still south side of the Alaska Peninsula to Sitkinak. And IFR just catching Point Barrow, otherwise marginal VFR Arctic coast and central and eastern North Slope with good VFR in the interior. Anatuvik, marginal VFR to start, becomes VFR probably before noontime. Same forecast for Adigan as well. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, good VFR flying day. Celine's visibility is unlimited for rainy, windy, Isabel and Mentasta for the Alaska range there. And then let's see, moving to Tanita, VFR, nothing but. And also Portage, VFR from AM to PM tomorrow into the evening. And Chilcoot and White starting out IFR, slowly improving to marginal VFR. So an upward trending conditions there, but with upper level of pressure hanging around, it be a slow process. And for the freezing levels, you can see the cool air aloft there over the southeast coast with the upper trough about 3,000 to 4,000 feet or so, and then the upper ridge there over the western interior into the Russian Far East, right around 8,000 feet for those freezing levels, and back down to 2,000 feet there for the central western Aleutians, western Bering Sea. icing with that boundary there between the warmer air to the east with the ridge and the cooler air over the western Bering. We've got that frontal boundary and maybe some areas of considerable moderate rime icing, more likely though light to very isolated, and just a slight chance in that band from the Pribilofs to the Alaska Peninsula, the old frontal boundary. And the Panhandle, mixed icing. Southern areas could maybe see some moderate rime mixed icing, or mixed icing, and the chances will diminish as you head up to the north. And for the jet stream, upper high pressure, Bristol Bay ridging actually from the Pacific there up into Bristol Bay, the center, another center there just west of the Bering Strait or so. So the east side of that, we've got north to northwest winds 70 to 85 knots all the way into the Gulf of Alaska. To the west of the ridge, south to southeast 65 to 80 knots, but up to 95 knots over the western Aleutians, and jet south of the Panhandle with the upper level low over the southern southeast coast. And taking a look at the 9,000 foot wind flow chart here, roughly at about say around 10,000 feet or so elevation. Upper Arctic low there that's actually dropping southward from the Arctic, west of Banks Island, bringing 20 to 30 knot winds will be increasing at this elevation along the central and eastern Arctic coast. And that whole system will be dropping southward aft beyond tomorrow and cutting across eastern interior. Otherwise, we've got northeast offshore winds there just south of Yakutat, eastern Gulf of Alaska, 25 knots, and the Bering Sea, 40 to 55 knot winds from the south ahead of the main low with 35 knot westerlies just catching the western Aleutians. And from there, 3,000 feet, 40 to 50 knot southerlies, light everywhere else over the Bering Sea, but light everywhere else. And turbulence, occasional moderate chop, Alaska Peninsula, Fox Islands.
Here at the end of the Earth, it still feels like a place for raw exploration and adventure. It's vast in all directions, and ground zero for some of the biggest questions we have about the climate. But when we decided to make a series about the frozen places on Earth, we knew there would be one hurdle we would need to jump over first. What is the cryosphere?
The what?
Ooh.
I have no idea.
While I'm aware of the cryosphere, I don't actually know what it is.
It has something to do with ice. All right, that's all I got.
How do you get people acquainted with the cryosphere when most of us don't even know what it is?
Hey, so here we are in Washington, D.C., standing on the roof of NASA headquarters. That's the Capitol building right behind me. And what headquarters does is kind of serve as the focal point to connect the dots.
That's Dr. Tom Wagner, NASA's cryospheric program scientist at headquarters. In short, Tom is responsible for making sure NASA knows what the current status of the cryosphere is.
The cryosphere is everything from the snow that falls by your house to the icy reaches of the Himalayas, to the big ice sheets of Antarctica all the way at the South Pole, and also the frozen ground of the Arctic, and even some of that frozen ground that's currently under the ocean.
If you had to break it down, you'd have a mix of sea ice, snow cover, permafrost, ice sheets, and glaciers.
Right now, our best predictions are that sea levels will rise anywhere from 1 to 3 feet within the next 100 years. 3 feet of sea level rise has the potential to displace about 100 million people, which is a lot of people that need to find new homes.
Our current reality places us at a near tipping point, and the cryosphere is playing a huge part in that delicate balance.
So one of the things people don't know about NASA is that we study the Earth, and we've been doing that since NASA's inception back in the 1950s. And we study the frozen part of the Earth in a variety of ways.
Missions like SNOWX, Airborne Snow Observatory, Oceans Melting Greenland, Operation Icebridge, Arctic Boreal Vulnerability Experiment, and countless other labs and individual researchers stand at the forefront of monitoring the cryosphere. But this year was a particularly big year.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Grace Follow-On, continuing the legacy of the Grace mission of tracking the movement of water across our planet.
2 state-of-the-art satellite missions are being launched in a single year as part of a major attempt to understand Earth's frozen places. Our scientists are answering hard questions, sharing stories from the field, and giving their best predictions for what we can expect of a warming world. We're taking you with us as we follow NASA explorers on their journey to the frozen ends of the Earth as they study our rapidly changing world from satellites, planes, and boots on the ground.
What we can do really well from orbit is we can tell when a surface of land is covered in snow. What's tricky is though, how thick is that snow? And it's even trickier how much water is in that snow.
What we think of snow depends a lot on where it falls. If you live in the eastern US, maybe it's fun. Or maybe it's just a pain.
But if you live in parts of the world where they depend on the water that's in the snow for a large fraction of their total water that they use for drinking, for agriculture, for industry, or for hydropower, the snow is a very important natural resource. For example, in the western part of the United States, 80 to 90% of their renewable water comes from snow.
Snow is one part of the cryosphere that many of us have actually encountered before, but it also plays a critical role in regulating the Earth's climate. Through decades of remote sensing, NASA has kept a close eye on the ebb and flow of snow cover.
We now have a 52-year record of snow cover in the Northern Hemisphere, and we can see changes in the extent of snow cover over the time period, particularly in the last few decades, where we can see that the snow cover has been retreating. It's been melting a lot earlier in the springtime.
The extent is relatively easy to do, and it has been done over the years. What's tricky is though, how thick is that snow? And it's even trickier how much water is in that snow.
That tricky part is known as the snow-water equivalent, or how much water would actually be in a layer of snow if it melted. NASA and its partners have taken to the air to help solve this elusive mystery. First, there's the Airborne Snow Observatory, or ASO, a small plane outfitted with a couple of instruments, one of which measures snow depth using LiDAR. LiDAR measures distance using light from lasers. Since 2014, ASO has flown over basins in California and Colorado, taking before and after looks at snow depth. Scientists subtract the snow-free summer data from the snow-on winter data to get an idea of the snow depth. There's no single way to measure all types of snow across the globe, and so NASA's other airborne campaign, SnowX, is testing different combinations of sensors. This winter, SnowX will test a new instrument, the Snow-Water Equivalent Synthetic Aperture Radar and Radiometer, or SWISAR.
SWISAR consists of 2 main components, one of them being the radar and the second one being the radiometer.
So with the radar providing the depth of the snow and the radiometer providing the density of the snow, we could put those 2 things together and get the snow-water equivalent. Here in the chamber, we're going to measure different radiation patterns at our different frequencies and do some full system testing in this chamber. This chamber kind of enables us to isolate various types of radiation and interference. And in about a month, we're going to take the instrument, mount it on a Twin Otter in the Grand Mesa in Colorado, and we're going to fly it over the Grand Mesa and take various different measurements. This is what we call our engineering flight.
Making sure the sensors are calibrated is key in order to face the challenges nature will throw at them.
Half of the area that gets covered by snow every winter contains trees and forest. and the trees make it difficult for the sensors to see the snow that's underneath the trees, so it makes it difficult for us to measure how much snow there is. After the snow's had a chance to sit on the ground for a while, it gets denser and denser and denser over time, and it changes, which is another reason why snow is very challenging to remotely sense. It doesn't stay the same, it's constantly changing. One of the things that we often do in the field is go dig what we call a snow pit. We literally dig a pit in the snow so we can see all the different layers. The layering is very important.
All this digging is part of ground truthing SnowX, a way of matching up what the airborne instruments see and what is actually sitting on the surface. The ultimate goal of SnowX is to figure out what the best combination of instruments would be for a future satellite mission in order to get a global picture of snow.
We need to know how much snow is in a snowpack, because if we have too much snow and the snow melts too fast, then you can get flooding. And if you don't have enough snow, or if the snow melts too early, that can lead to a longer wildfire season, a more intense drought, and we need to know these things for water resource planning.
After we had a record that was about 15, 20 years long, we started noticing that the extent of the ice in the Arctic was getting smaller over time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Back looking at our ice analysis for today, Monday. Still expanding thinner ice area there off the western Arctic coast into the Bering Strait, and of course the northern Bering Strait. Still some heavier ice north side of St. Lawrence Island, but expanding open water there in eastern, now pushing into central Norton Sound. And for the coastal water forecast, really light winds all along the southeast coast, eastern Gulf, North Gulf coast, 5 to 10 knots, mostly from the northwest or west-northwest. Seas running 2 to 3 feet. And for Wednesday, southeast winds, central and northern inside waters of the Panhandle at 10 knots and 15 knots for Clarence Strait with 3-foot seas. North to northeast winds 15 knots on the south coast, and the north coast 5 to 10 knots, averaged out to the north or north-northeast. And for the Prince William Sound zone, northwest winds light 10 knots, 2-foot seas, north 10 knots for the eastern North Gulf Coast, western North Gulf Coast northeast at 10. And west 15 for the Barren Islands, seas 4 feet, southwest 15 Kamishak Bay, and north to northwest breeze at 10 knots for Cook Inlet. And for Wednesday, south winds 20 knots, Kamishak Bay and southern Cook Inlet, north of the Foreland Zone, southwest at 15, seas 5 feet, and Prince William Sound, southeast at 10. And for the North Gulf Coast, southwest 10 to 15 knots, 5 to 6 foot seas, Barren Islands, southwest at 15. Kodiak Island, southwest winds tomorrow, 15 to 20 knots, strongest there in Shelikof Strait with seas up to 6 feet. Sitkinak to Castle Cape, east winds at 20, and then small craft advisories, Alaska Peninsula, east-southeast, 25 knots, 5 to 10 foot seas, and east at 10 for Bristol Bay with 2-foot seas. And for Wednesday, the Alaska Peninsula, south to southeast at 20 knots, and Sitkinak to Castle Cape, south at 20, 7-foot seas. Kodiak Island, southwest 20 to 25 knots with the small craft advisories, and Shelikof Strait, where seas will be 8 feet as well. Otherwise, Bristol Bay looking at southeast winds at 15 with 3-foot seas. For the Fox Islands, Unalaska Unamak Island, well, for Unalaska Island, southeast 25 knots, 6 to 8-foot seas. Unamak Island, southeast at 30. Adak and Atka, Bering Sea side, southeast winds 20 knots. Pacific side, small craft advisories northwest at 25 knots. And Amchitka Island, southwest 15, Kiska Shimianatu, west at 15 for tomorrow. Even lighter winds in store for Shimiatu and Kiska on Wednesday, south at 10 knots, seas 5 feet, 15 knots, Amchitka Island, and light winds there for Adak, Atka, and Unamak Island, all at 10 knots from the south or southwest, seas 4 to 8 feet. On Alaska Island, southwest at 15 knots with 5 to 7-foot seas. And for the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, winds will be southeast at 20 knots with 5-foot seas, east at 20 for the Yukon Delta coast, Small craft advisories for the Pribilof Islands, St. Paul and St. George, southeast 25, east 25 for St. Matthew Island. Small craft advisories also out for St. Lawrence Island for east winds at 25 knots, Norton Sound east at 15. And for Wednesday, St. Paul and St. George, southwest at 15 knots, 7-foot seas. Small craft advisories continue for St. Matthew Island for southeast winds at 25 knots. Small crafts also out for St. Lawrence Island, east winds 25 knots there. Otherwise, the southwest coast, call it southeast at 20 with 6 to 7-foot seas, east at 15 for Norton Sound. Eastern Beaufort Sea, well, central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, west winds light 5 to 10 knots, northeast 15 knots for the west side all the way down to Wales toward the Bering Strait. And for Wednesday, west winds 15 knots, central and western coast, eastern coast 10 knots out of the west. Small craft advisories, Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson for northeast winds at 25 knots. Actually, that's a brisk wind advisory. And from Cape Thompson to Wales, northeast at 20 knots. For tonight, high pressure up over the north slope. Fairly cloudy skies, some areas of fog, low clouds. Flurries or light snow possible there with the upper disturbance. The far eastern stretch of the coastline, actually even into the eastern Brooks Range across the far eastern north slope. Risk of showers in eastern interior Copper River Basin and showers southern Panhandle. Should dry out in the north. And that weakening front will keep occasional rain for the Alaska Peninsula, Pribilof Islands, and unsettled for the Aleutians through tomorrow with a couple of lows there. The original front washes out and another one comes up with more rain and gusty winds for the eastern Aleutians. And showers back in the picture there, a little more extensive than tonight for the southeast coast. Just a risk on the eastern border there. Another disturbance dropping southward from the Arctic brings chance of snow for the Arctic coast into the north side of the Brooks Range. Otherwise, a weak front brings a chance of rain to the Alaska Peninsula.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.